welcome back to Melissa Hager TV. Thank you so much for tuning in today. If you have not done so yet, click subscribe and make sure that you ring that bell so you get notified every time we load a new video. Today, our special guest that we have, he hangs out with all the coolest funny people, Mr. Mark Ridley from Mark Ridley's Comedy Castle. Hi, Mark. How are you?
Oh, good, Melissa. Quarantine, that's how I'm doing.
Yeah. Now, was your hair that color before quarantine, or is that your grow out?
I think, believe it or not, I just cut my own hair a couple of weeks ago.
Oh,
I have a beard trimmer and I put the longest guard on it and just went like that, and
nice.
It's all done. Yeah. So that's the one benefit of aging. When it gets short and gray like this, you can just cut your own hair.
You just let it ride. That's awesome.
Yep.
Well, I'm trying to get creative of coloring or covering mine, because my hairstylist has called me several times and she's like, don't you dare, don't touch it. Don't touch it. I'm like, oh, but it's not what it used to be. Oh,
yeah,
no.
Yeah. This is the new normal, Melissa, that's for sure.
I know it. It's wild. So let's talk about your business. It's so exciting. It's so inspiring. It's definitely instrumental in helping me get started. I mean, we went down, well, I've been to your club like a bazillion times. I love coming to your comedy club. No one can reenact what you have going on there. It is definitely unique. It is definitely its own thing. And your staff, your stage, your whole setup, it's just really neat. Now this is not your first place. You guys started out.
No, it's actually my 7th place. I just when I first started out in 1979, I just produced shows at different restaurants. So I'd be at one restaurant for a series of months, move on to another one, get in a fight with the restaurant owner, move on to another one. Finally took on business partners in 1985, and then had a restaurant club over on Woodward Avenue, and then we moved to my current location, which is the 7th location in 1990.
Very cool. And you remodeled the inside of the building.
Yes, it used to be the Royal Oak Daily Tribune. So where the showroom is, in the back of the showroom, there were 9 printing presses. And then there were a series of smaller rooms in the front half filled with like large rolls of paper that they put on the presses. And then the front where the bar is, that was all a series of conveyor belts where they would load the newspapers, and those would go out to the loading dock to the trucks to deliver the papers. So it took about 7 months and long hours, and it was a lot of fun. It was kind of neat to see something come out of an old newspaper building.
Right. Yeah. That's really cool. So this is your 41st year as Mark Ridley's Comedy Castle, right?
Yes, it is. Yeah.
Wow. That's a lot of funny people to hang out with.
There's been quite a few of them. Some of them have gone on to bigger and better things, and some have kind of said goodbye to the business. So,
Yeah, you've probably seen a lot come and go.
Oh, yeah. And there are quite a few that aren't with us on this earth anymore. So that's always sad to see. But, it's life. I mean, in 41 years, you're going to see the worst, the best, and everything.
Well, let's talk about some of the big stars that started with you, like Tim Allen and Bob Saget. And what was it like seeing them guys?
Well, Tim was a clothing salesman in downtown Birmingham. And so he just walked in, called me and said, I'd like to do open mic. Well, every night was open mic then. But I said, okay, great. And he came in and just started doing it. Just before then was Dave Coulier, who was 19 years old at the time, right? I mean, less than a year out of high school.
Right.
But he had been performing all through school. In fact, his best friend, Mark Sandrowski, is in Hollywood, and he's been the one and only director of The Big Bang Theory since it's been on the air.
Oh, wow.
So they were both doing sketches together in school, and Dave went into performance, and Mark did a little bit of performing, but then went off into directing. So I had Dave and Tim, and then moved to a little bit bigger location, and Bob Saget, Gary Shandling, Jay Leno, all of them started coming in, and I was paying maybe $500 a weekend for them to come in.
Wow.
But the good thing was that Make Me Laugh was on TV at the time.
Yeah.
And it was very popular. It was on 5 nights a week on Channel 50. And for those of you that don't remember, there was a station called UHF. And there was VHF and UHF. VHF was channels 2, 4, and 7, and UHF was channel 50, 56, and I think channel 20.
Oh, wow.
So it was on channel 50 against the news every night, and we were getting plugs almost every week from the comedians performing on Make Me Laugh, saying they were coming to Detroit because we were only one of 10 clubs in the country at the time. And Mike Binder was very, very instrumental. Mike is a big time director now, writer and director. And if you look at his roster of movies he's written and directed, it's phenomenal. But he was a stand-up comedian, and he was really the first one to come into Detroit, sell the place out, go back to Los Angeles and said, hey, my hometown's got a comedy club. And then I just started getting calls like crazy.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's so cool. So then booking became a little easier.
Well, a little. I mean, I still didn't know I only knew their act from Make Me Laugh. But if it was somebody I didn't know, I mean, how are you supposed to see them on an internet that didn't exist?
That wasn't there. Right.
I remember one of the earliest audition tapes that I received was from Bobby Slayton, the pit bull of comedy. And he sent me his headshot, a resume, and a cassette tape of him warming up for Ray Charles. So I just sit there and look at their headshot, listen to the cassette tape, and that was the way they auditioned,
Oh, wow. That's cool.
Or if I would get 2 or 3 comedians to recommend another comedian, that's how I booked.
Yeah. That does seem very helpful when you get into like a vein of great referrals. That seems.
Oh, absolutely. Oh, yeah.
I mean, obviously I'm very new to the booking world still. We're still at, the 4-year mark, but I have a really hard time getting people to return my emails because it's like, who are you? Like, I have no idea who you are. So that, when you want to scale, sometimes it gets a little bit difficult until you get that person that says, like, for me, Rocky's been huge. Rocky's been
Rocky
super
Laporte.
helpful.
Yeah. Sure. Yeah.
Rocky's
sweetheart of a guy too.
Yeah, so great. He's such a helpful guy. And he's like, oh my gosh, why do you work so hard? And I'm like, what else is there to do? I got to be a mom then and a wife. Like, I don't want to do that.
Right. I don't have to be a mom and a wife.
No, I'm going to work hard.
Yeah, no, it became very, very easy when Binder and Saget and Coulier I think Coulier was with me for about a year before he moved to LA. And Dave immediately, a lot of people don't know this, but immediately he got into the cartoon voiceover world, which is big money. And he was only 19, 20 years old. And then he was supposed to star opposite Tom Hanks in Bosom Buddies.
Really?
And at the last minute, they decided he looked too young for the part. So they got rid of him and brought in Peter Scolari, who became the co-star.
Oh.
Yeah. So things happened for Dave right away, right off the bat.
Right. Yeah, and you've had him at he's done a class. He's taught a class at the Castle, and that was really interesting. And he was very transparent with, go this direction, here's what could happen. Go this direction, here's what could happen. Right. It's really cool that he even shared that. He didn't have to do that.
Well, what I like about what Dave has done is he's retired on his own terms. He spent all 40 years in Los Angeles, and he decided to move back to Michigan, build a house, be close to his friends and family. He's going to stay in Michigan. In fact, just before the virus happened, he was going to start working almost every open mic night at the club because he was getting ready to do a multi-city Air Force base tour around the country. He has a plane, he's a pilot. So he's going to fly from Air Force Base to Air Force Base and perform for like 26 Air Force bases around the country. And then of course, the COVID-19 shut everything down. But, I just talked to him the other night and he said, when this is all over, I still want to come and work out at the club once in a while. I'll keep my comedy muscles warm.
That's awesome. That's cool. Yeah, cool guy. We've seen pictures of you and Jay Leno hanging out in front of the club. You guys roll around in your fancy cars. That's pretty fun.
Not me. I don't have the fancy car, Melissa. He has. Me and Tim Allen have the fancy cars.
Okay, well, at least you cleared that up. I wasn't going to call you out.
I have one car.
No, I think, was that last summer or 2 summers ago when you and Jay and Tim were all out front of the club? And I mean, Facebook just like freaked out.
Yeah, that was September of 2018 because
Yeah.
I had just promoted Tim at the Royal Oak Theater.
Yeah.
And then he came back and did his Jay Leno's Garage at the club and around metropolitan Detroit. So yeah, that was kind of cool. And Jay's got a pretty good memory. He remembered when he played the club. He's like Jerry Seinfeld. They both have it all up here still. And
Wow.
he just started talking about what was going on with the club. And then then it's like, okay, I'll see you again in 10 years. And we could probably pick up and talk about whatever at that time. I remember when I introduced Jerry Seinfeld at the premiere for his movie, The Bee Movie, and I hadn't seen him in years. And I was waiting off in another theater before I had to go out and introduce him. And he came in and he remembered that I loaned him my car. He remembered the apartment that he stayed in. And he remembered what kind of car I had so that he could go to Henry Ford Museum and kind of tour around all of metropolitan Detroit for a couple of days and, by using my car.
Wow.
And then, that was it. I mean, who'd remember those kind of things, So,
right.
They're very nice people. Very nice people.
Cool. Well, yeah. one of my very favorite comedians, Kathleen Madigan, she is very loyal to your club. How did that relationship start?
Some people you just hit it off with. And, Kathleen and I just go back almost 30 years.
Wow.
And, she had just started headlining. And I think it was important. Well, I think the one thing is that I'd be the one that would pick them up at the airport, take them to the hotel or the condo that I had, then pick them up the next morning, take them to do radio, pick them up the morning after that to do radio. I would be on stage. So they saw that I worked all aspects of the club. Besides booking them, I took them back to the airport on Sunday morning. So, and then Kathleen remembers that I was a single father at the time. And every time she came in, I would be calling my sons on my cell phone saying, okay, are you getting ready for school? Are you up for school? And she goes, I didn't have that when I was a kid. They didn't know if I went to school or not. So she remembered little things like that. And it's just been a good friendship. I mean, even through this whole thing, we've had a chance to talk 3 times and see, what we can do down the road if and when the club opens again. We don't know where we're going to be in the next few months. That's the bad thing.
I know.
It might be a 100-seat showroom and, everyone's wearing a mask, so if somebody comes in and holds up the place, you can't describe them. He's wearing a mask. So, but, she said she's willing to come in and work the room, whether it's 100 seats or 400 seats. So that's really nice. Yeah.
That is sweet. Yeah, that's definitely going to be an interesting. We just watched a special this morning. They were talking about what school might look like in the fall, and where they normally have 25 kids, they're talking about putting 10 to 12 kids so that they're spaced out enough. And I'm like, wow. When you think about a comedy room, the intimacy is part of what makes a great show.
Absolutely. And you think about all of the things that won't be going on. I had a long talk with from 10 feet away with my neighbor down the road who had polio. He's 72 now. He had polio as a 4-year-old. And he said, I hope it doesn't take them as long to come up with a vaccine as it did Jonas Salk. That was 7 years in the making.
Yeah.
So he said, I'd like to see this go really fast. He said, I was one that had polio, so I can, speak from experience. And he said, but, to have a comedy room, he said, I can't even imagine, you have a table here and then 10 feet away, another table, and then 10 feet away, another table. Mm-hmm. But you know what? I'm part of a consortium of club owners from around the country, and we talk about this on Facebook. We share a lot of ideas, which is what you have to do when it comes down to this. And normally I'm a 5-show, 3-night affair. I think I'll probably have to turn into 4 nights and doing, 8 shows or 9 shows in order to make it work for the comedian and for the club. I mean, we all have to work together till we get back up to speed. And that's happened in the past to me where I've had some troubles and I needed help from the comedians and they've always come through.
Yeah. Well, and that's the thing that's one of the very first things that made me look up to you is my understanding was when the going is good, you're extra generous. And so why wouldn't people help you when the going isn't good? You know what I mean? Like that's what community is all about. That's what we're
Well,
supposed to do.
yeah, that's what you're supposed to do. And I think, that everybody wants to see, nobody wants to see, look, we have clubs all around us. I mean, Mike Green's got one night stands. There are other clubs in the area. And, you want to see the clubs succeed, because when the comedians are working more, they're getting better. So everybody's succeeding at one level or another, whether it's the club, the comedian, the customers are getting more educated to comedy. I remember when I first started out, a lot of audience members thought that going to a comedy show meant you got to heckle.
Yeah.
They just thought that was what they got to do. And I said, so we had to educate them as to, no, that's not part of the show. You're not part of the show. We have the microphone, we have the stage, you paid the money, and so did everybody else in here to watch the show. So it took a couple of years to get people educated to that.
Well, I like how you call it educated. That's a very nice way to say it.
Yeah, there could be a few other words I could use in there, but I want this to be a PG rated interview.
Yeah. No, and through your club, you've helped raise up also a really great core group of comedians in Michigan that for a small timer like me has proved to be very instrumental. So I'm up in rural Michigan where there is no comedy, not really anything. So when I started putting on a few shows, people just went crazy over it.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
the Bill Busharts and the Rob Littles and the Sal D'Amelios and the Norm Stulls, them guys have been, I mean, I work them to death when I can,
Right.
when I can.
Right.
I can afford them. They're close by. They don't have to spend the night anywhere, and they show up, and that's all because I mean you trained them. They all started with your club, and they talk about your club all the time.
Well, and that's nice. Norm and I got to play golf before when I was in Florida before, and Norm's down there too. So we talked a little bit about that. But I think that you look at Norm, and the nice thing about it is if you talk about Norm and Rob and everybody else, they're kind of passing along what they've learned to the newer crop coming up too. And I think that's very important. One thing that I can say that other club owners, when they meet a comedian from Michigan, besides talking about the Comedy Castle or other clubs, they're talking about what a great backbone of comedy we do have in the state of Michigan. Michigan cranks out a lot of good comedians because a lot of those comedians is not just stuck with stand-up comedy. They've gone on up to acting, writing, directing, producing, showrunners. They've done everything, and their names are connected. They're synonymous with Michigan and Michigan comedy, which I think is wonderful.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and you have the beginner class and the advanced class. We talked to Joel just a couple weeks ago. That video's already posted on Most Hager TV. If you want to scroll back a little bit, you can see that one. Yeah. I went. Let's see. I was in comedy. I did my first show. Then I produced a show. And the headliner that was in the show, he said, "Hey, there's an advanced comedy class in your state. You should go check it out." And then I spent a whole summer driving back and forth, taking Joel's class. I learned so much stuff. I was like, "Oh, okay. Yeah. I get it." And that's actually where I learned that you were the one that came up with the 3-comic show, the MC, the feature, and the headliner. How did you think of that?
Necessity.
Yeah.
It's a mother of invention. Absolutely. I only had 9 comedians when I first started out. And when I say comedians, I mean there were maybe 2 that had any prior stage experience. So when I first brought in Mike Binder, he was my very first headliner. I said, well, I don't want to put all 9 people up with Mike, so I'll be the MC, which I did for 14 years, and then I took one of the better acts that was already established, had some stage time, and then Mike was the headliner. So it just really started by accident, not a necessity. And I said, we can't just do one show, because at that time I had a 90-seat room. I said, I have to do 2 shows. And then I got to where I had to do 3 shows on a Saturday night. So, there were a lot of things that just turned into, because of the necessity. You just had to do it. That was a mother of invention.
Well, you call it necessity. We call it innovative. And we are very thankful for your innovation in comedy because it makes a huge difference moving forward. I mean, you've affected comedy all across the world with the 3-comic plan. Like,
Well, it
you think
worked
about
out. I never think about it. I just try and think about when can I get my doors open again?
Well, let's talk about that. So we're closed down right now. It's our stay-at-home order. It doesn't seem to be going anywhere. A few restrictions were lifted. I did talk to a state senator a couple weeks ago, and he said that it sounds like performers and leisurely travel are bottom of the list for going back to work. So your bleeding heart went out to your staff, and tell us about what you're doing right now.
Well, Mike Birbiglia, the comedian, started basically a GoFundMe movement. It's called tipyourwaitstaff.com. And one of my staff told Mary, my manager, about it. And I went online and went, wow, this is great. And I recognized all the comedy clubs on there. And I think at this point, I've told a couple of other friends of mine, so there's probably about 25 clubs on there and more to come. And you just go to comedycastle.com or you look up tipyourwaitstaff.com. You can see the Comedy Castle on there, and it's a GoFundMe page. Granted, some of our wait staff, not all of them, just some of them are collecting unemployment. So that runs out July 25th, and I really doubt that our doors will be open by then. That's just me, the pessimist. I think we're looking more into the fall, and so anyway, and then even then it's going to be pretty tight. So we have this GoFundMe page. We set a goal of $25,000 as of this morning. I think we're at 4,300. I do have a Zoom conference comedy thing coming up. And all I can say is there's some pretty big alumni names that are going to be on it. And it's going to be monitored by Ken Calvert, formerly of WCSX, and Jim O'Brien of WCSX. They're going to monitor the whole thing.
And when is that? Do you have it scheduled?
Well, we kind of have the next couple of weeks. We're going to do a social media. We'll do an e-blast, a Facebook thing, Twitter, to tune into it. It'll be live, and then we're going to record it so we can keep it on our page. If people miss it, they can watch it and still make pledges. So it's really like a mini telethon is what it is, maybe a 1-hour telethon. We don't want to make it too long because, guys can sit there and talk to each other on Zoom, for maybe 15, 20 minutes. We all have ADD. Yeah. So
especially in this world,
So we'll make the big announcement. There's some big names that are alumni of the club, and they'll be on it, and just plugging the heck out of the tipyourwaitstaff.com.
And all the money collected in there goes to your waitstaff.
Goes to the waitstaff, yeah. I know that few clubs like the Comedy Cellar in New York, they had a $50,000 goal, and they raised $111,000 so far.
Wow.
So some have exceeded their goals, others have met them, and some are still like us, are still below. So if we hit our goal, it's just a little something extra for the waitstaff. Yep.
That's very cool.
It'll be good.
Yeah, it seems like this time right now, it brings out the worst in people or it brings out the best in people. And if you're typically surrounded by good people and positive people, you see so much more good stuff happening. Absolutely. And I know when I saw that, tons of comedians that have worked at the Castle have been sharing it and posting it. Yeah. And it's just
and thank you for your donation, by the way. Now I'm going to say that publicly.
No, you're welcome. As soon as I saw it, I was like, how do we get involved in this? I think it's cool. That's why we're making this video. I hope that this video will bring attention to it. And so yes, the comic at a comedy show is the entertainer. They are the one making you laugh. But let's just face facts. If you didn't have the alcohol you had in your system, some of that stuff wouldn't have been that funny. So the waitstaff is just as important.
Having been a waiter for many years, which I was while I was going through college, I truly appreciate what a wait person goes through. Because it's not just going in, waiting on the person, picking up the money and walking away. It's getting your section ready. It's cleaning up at the end of the night. It's making sure everything's set for the next day. They do a lot more work. And let's face it, they're either taking care of their kids during the day or they're working another job just trying to make ends meet.
Yeah,
so I think this is important to do this. To me, it's very important.
Yeah, and I've always, since I started comedy, I came up with this whole glitter lip thing right from the beginning. That's kind of my thing on stage. Just in case I'm not funny, at least I'm kind of sparkly to look at. And the last couple
You
times
do a great job.
the last couple times I've been at your club, I have not been successful in getting my glitter lips on Mary, which was my goal. She was no way, but I did get a couple of the waitresses to wear them, and they just loved it. And they were like,
Right.
"Oh my gosh, my tips are bigger." I'm like, "Well, yeah, look at you. Your lips are sparkling. Everybody loves that." So
Yeah, that's great.
I have, the last couple of times I've been there, I've fallen in love with some of your staff. They're so wonderful. I come in the door, they know my name, and they're like, "Oh, hi, are you performing or watching?" And most of the time I'm watching, I'm like, "Oh, just here watching." And I can't believe their memory, the amount of people that they see and that they can remember some of us blows my mind. And they
It's
are
great. It's like
great.
they're the best. And you talk about Mary, she's been with me since 1985, and
Wow.
she just gave me her 5-year retirement notice.
Yeah.
So, which
Well, we'll
I,
see.
I
We'll
will see. I think she's going to add a little bit at the end. I hope so. I really, she makes our lives possible.
Oh,
Really,
she's
she's
great.
great.
And the fundraisers that she organizes,
Yep.
I've got to be a part of a few of those, and everybody loves her. Everybody, I'm like, "Oh yeah, you set this up through Mary," and they're like, "Oh gosh, Mary's the best." I'm like, I know. And I love it too, because she lives way out in the middle of nowhere like I do, and you'd never know watching her prance around there. Like, she's just a little hillbilly too.
You should see where I live right here. If I could turn this computer, there's 30 acres of woods behind me, Lake Michigan that way.
Wow, Mark,
Yeah.
I didn't even know.
Isolating in place is the norm, not the exception over here. So I like it.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Well, we are very hopeful that your club will be back open. We all love it there. My very first comedy experience ever was your comedy club. And Dave Landau was the headliner. Matt Holt was the feature. And my mom had surprised me with tickets. I had just started talking about comedy, and just people had started saying, "Hey, you should try comedy." I'm like, "Hey, I'm a very successful realtor. Why on earth would I do comedy? There is no comedy up here." And they're like, "No, but you're so funny. Just do it." And then now it's so funny. Now I do no real estate. Like, that's gone. That's so far away.
Yeah.
And my mom surprised me with tickets, and I had never, I'm serious, my only experience with comedy before going to that show that night in November of 16, I believe it was, Bill Engvall's "Here's Your Sign" cassette tape. I played that over and over and over in my cassette player when I was a kid, and I didn't realize he was a comedian. I thought, like, Tim Allen, like when they said stuff that was funny, I thought they were reading a script and they were acting. Like, I had no idea that comedy, that was a job. I didn't know that was a thing. And I sat at I think it's table 33, that's right by the metal pole.
Yeah.
And I kept hitting my head on that pole, laughing so hard. I was just like, "Oh." And my mom's like, "You're going to have a concussion." I'm like, "I can't believe how great this is. This is the greatest thing in the world."
Nothing better. Nothing better. And you know where "Here's Your Sign" was recorded?
No, don't even say it.
Yeah, at the club, my club.
Ah.
Bill's first 2 albums were recorded at my club.
Oh,
that went platinum, and the next one went gold. Yeah.
That is so cool.
Yeah.
I got this crazy cool opportunity to have a one-on-one phone conversation with Bill Engvall 2 years ago, and it was 5 minutes. That's all I got was 5 minutes. We ended up being on the phone for 40 minutes, and he talked so highly of your club. I said I was from Michigan, and he said, "Have you ever heard of Mark Ridley's Comedy Castle?" And I was like, "If I'm calling myself a comedian and I have not heard of Mark Ridley's, you should hang up the phone right now. You shouldn't even be talking to me."
Yeah.
But yeah, I think him and Jim Gaffigan both blow me away, that they're so funny and squeaky clean. Like, they don't have to say a dirty thing, and it's so funny.
And they're real sweethearts too, which I really love in this business. I think I could count on one hand the number of people I've never gotten along with in this business in 41 years.
That's cool.
And that, but that's bound to happen in any business, right?
Right.
So, I'm happy that the majority of them are the people that I really like and I want to be around. Bill and I used to play in a golf outing every year down in Texas. He's from Texas. And my good friend Doug English, who played for the Detroit Lions, he had a big golf outing every year. And Bill and I were always in the same group with Doug and a couple of other guys. It was always a fivesome. And I tell you, I would leave there after 3 days of being in Texas. My stomach would hurt from laughing so much. Plus, I had a bad headache. I wonder why.
Aspirin and water for 3 days after that.
Yep.
That's awesome. The amount of memories that you have stored up here, I can only imagine. You should write a book. That's what you need to do, is write a book.
But I'm done with the club. I'll be that old guy that's going, what did I do back then?
Let me wait till I get the glitter lips on Mary. Just give me a couple more times. I know I'm going to wear her down. I know I am going to do it.
Sounds good.
Well, it's been awesome talking to you today, Mark. Thank you so much for doing this with us. And tipyourwaitstaff.com. Go there. Look for Mark Ridley's Comedy Castle. Let's pop them up to their goal. Maybe by the time you're watching this, they've already hit their goal. You can still add to the fund. There is not.
Watch for our big announcement coming out in the next couple of weeks with the Zoom type comedy thing. So
yes, that'll be very fun. Oh gosh, we'll be tuning in. And I've been contemplating putting up one of them big inflatable screens in my front yard, just to be able to have some people gather, like 5 people in the yard, and we can watch something fun together.
There you go.
not that my 5 and 7-year-old aren't entertaining, but man, they are stinky. I'm like, do you fart this much at school? My gosh, this is crazy. This has been awesome, Mark, and maybe we'll get an update from you in a couple weeks and we can add that on.
Sounds great, Melissa. Appreciate it. You stay safe.
Thank you, Mark.
All right. Bye-bye. Thank you.